Welcome to the Priority Lane podcast, the show where we discover how to work smarter, not harder. I'm your host today, Lawrence Dauncey, and I'm really excited about this particular session as it's a new series on the podcast called Women in Business. And I'm even more excited to welcome our first guest onto the Women in Business podcast, Jennifer Toon-Davenport. She is Managing Director of Forest Wealth Management. Aside from being, having a paper round as a young girl to being a qualified lawyer, working across continents in business development and recruitment for financial services industry, she's done a whole host of things. So I'm really looking forward to chatting to Jen, and she's with us now. So welcome, Jennifer. It's great to see you.
Hi, nice to see you too. This is my first podcast, so
Well, nothing to be nervous about.
I always thought I'd be better on radio.
Well, I have the face for radio too, so we're okay. Not that you do, by the way. I'll take that back. Listen, I'm just going to kick this off. So, when we had a chat the other week, I was intrigued to know that, how diverse, I suppose, your career has been. Starting as you told me, doing a newspaper round, which is, I think is great. It's a great start. What I wanted to know is, aside from your degree in law, and I don't think you've ever practiced. Is that correct?
No, just did my
Okay.
LPC and then straight off.
So what attracted you to the financial services side of things?
I think at first it was a bit finding yourself, getting to travel. Um, it was definitely the getting on a plane and going to see the world.
Okay.
Feeling like a grown up. When you first start out, we all know that you're going through the airport and you feel, you know, very grown up and mature. Now you're like, oh God, I've got to be there 3 hours before and I've got
It's
three
true.
meetings to do, changes.
Yeah.
But, it was a chance to see the world and work whilst doing it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And so did you have a mentor at that time when you kind of your first foray into that
No,
world?
I just
Okay.
kind of fell into it and I was not very prepared. I turned up to Abu Dhabi in August. I think it was nearing close to 50 degrees. And I had like a woolly coat with me, all these warm clothes, because for some reason I thought it was going to be cold. But
Okay.
I'd been a bit busy at Leeds Festival the weekend before, so I hadn't done much preparation. So that was a life lesson learned and a quick trip to Carrefour at the time, which was when my budget had stretched to go and buy
Right.
some cooler clothing.
Right. But so that, I don't know, I think that speaks volumes about perhaps your drive, your personality, that you hadn't done any prep effectively, and you've just decided to just jump into a role that, like you say, you hadn't really perhaps thought about. I mean, where does the drive or ambition or no fear come from?
I always think, what's the worst thing that can happen? And your day to day is only as bad as you let the next day be. So if you're willing to work and, there's always jobs out there. Like I would be quite happy. I've said this to loads of people. If my kids needed it now, I'd go and stack shelves. I'd go and do it. There's always work. And if you work hard, there's always rewards. So just a little bit of blind faith. Like as long as you're busy
Yeah.
people, that's kind of, if you stay busy and you take chances, you know.
Okay. So that's for me, taking the chances or perhaps seeing opportunities where maybe others don't. That's a true entrepreneurship style. So I'm intrigued to know, is that something that came naturally to you, or did your parents kind of give you that drive?
I think my parents did something better than that. They gave me the security. So I was always all right as who I was. As long as I was
Okay.
kind and I did the right thing, I could try anything. They were always like on the sidelines. They still are. They're like the biggest cheerleaders. You can always come home. Go
Okay.
out there, make your mistakes. Don't ever hurt anyone. Do the right thing, and the door is always open. And they
That's
stick by that, which means that you've got a safety net, which means, and a foundation, and there's people you can pick up the phone to and go, oh, I'm not quite sure about this. And they are bluntly honest. So,
Mm.
which is a good thing. They'll be like, "Well, trust your gut. If it doesn't sound right, it doesn't feel right, then don't do it."
Okay, great.
So,
Okay.
I was very lucky in that regard.
So that's for you, obviously having, a structured and balanced support, network is a key thing then for your success, which is clear, which is great.
Yeah, and, like, my mum's fierce as well, so she was a single mum. My dad's heavily involved, so it was great, but, she was taking us on trips to Australia, and we wanted to go and learn about the Romans at school, so she took us to Rome on her own. She was, you know, quite a figure to follow. Nobody, intimidates her. She always is like, "It's the right thing to do. I'll do it." So she is someone that, you look at her and you're like, "I've got to match that. I've got to try and be at least part of the woman that she is."
Yeah. No, well, that's incredible to hear, and she does sound extremely dynamic without a doubt. So, and I imagine you probably, in your personal life as well as business life, you've obviously adopted the similar traits, I imagine.
Yeah, she's all very much about the family, and if you can open the door to people, you do it. If you can help, you do it. You know, and we've got this motto and we have it now with our kids, and it's like, "In a world where you can be anything, be kind." And that's like a family thing. And
Okay.
she, you don't need everything. You don't need to look at what everybody else has got. You need to look at what's important. And then what you realize is lots of things aren't important.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. And sometimes you get life shocks that remind you, and you have to kind of think, you can go, "Oh, this is a really bad thing that's happening to me right now." Or you can go, "This is helping me to align to back where I need to be, because I'm shocked because it's out of my comfort zone, but I'm going to use it to pull me back into where I need to be," because everybody wanders off path at times or doesn't look at everything. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's been scammed
Yeah.
before or ripped off. Everybody's not been paid. And you can either focus on that or you can move forward and go, "Right, that's a lesson learned. I'll put it on like a scout badge and I'll go forward."
That's a good analogy. How many badges have you got?
Far too many.
That's good. I like that. That's great. A scout badge is fantastic. So now, obviously, let's fast forward to present day. I know, as I said, you've done lots cross continents, Asia and Hong Kong, all over, which is really impressive. Um, but now, in your role as managing director for Forest Wealth, um, I mean, how do you describe your leadership style, and has it evolved to be different from your male counterparts that you know?
I think it's very different. I think in your 20s, you're trying to be the man and not, trying to act like Mr. Big and be one of the lads, try and fit in. And then in your 30s, I know I went through a stage where I was like, had kids and I didn't quite know what my identity was anymore. Was I a mother? Was I a parent? What does it work? And then I was like, "Does this make you weaker?" And I was like, "Actually, no, makes you different." So I try and be like empathetic. Like, I like everybody to have my mobile number. I don't want to be a ball breaker. I don't want to focus on figures and things like that. I want to focus on the people that work for me and making sure they're happy and they're secure and they've got a good base, because that's how I've kind of done it in life. I had that good base and I had people that would listen and not judgment, but you could ask the silly questions. I always say to everybody I speak to, don't be afraid to ask the silly questions, because they're the ones that are important to you, but you don't want to look like you don't
Mm,
know. But if you don't know something, the only silly
right.
thing is to not ask about it. So I think, men have great qualities, and, I'm really lucky because I'm married to Ian and he's a leader in his industry, and we spend a lot of time talking about things, and he's got a very, pragmatic view. I'm more heart led, I would say.
Okay.
You know, but I think that comes from being a mum and you see, different trials and stuff, and you want to help people overcome them. And I do think in our industry, there is a lot of toxic behaviors and bullying and, "Oh, you can't sign a check," or, "What are you doing?" And, you know, charts and, "These people are good," but there's great people that do what they want to do in life and they're doing good work that
Mm,
don't respond well to that.
yeah.
And I don't necessarily think it always brings the right outcome for clients. You know, maybe we should focus on who's got the best client satisfaction scores, who's done the best work, who's made the clients the most money, rather than who's making the most money for themselves, the firm, and bullying people that don't want to do it. Because there is quite or over the years, there's been quite a bullying culture, like, be one of the boys, a lot of the incentives were very male dominated, sports, not saying that women don't like sports, but for me, it's get out there. And I was just like, I don't
Somewhat
need that.
aggressive, perhaps?
Yeah. Yeah. There's
Right.
quite a lot of big egos involved. And I just think lots of people don't need that. And sometimes men in our industry, I think it's a lot of the time we talk about women and what they struggle with, but men in our industry, because it is very male dominated, they
Yes.
struggle with the fact that they've got a lot of pressure. They're quite often the primary bread earner. They're quite often on commission-based roles. And rather than highlighting that pressure and keep compounding it and saying to them, do more, do better, do that, it's like, whoa, what do you need right now? Like, how
Mhm.
can we help you? Just take a step back, because
Yeah,
it will come. You are really lucky. Your skill set is yourself, right? You need to look after yourself, and then you can give out to other people.
sure.
Ignore the company, ignore the noise. Like, what do you need? If you're full and you're not worrying, your clients are going to be better looked after, your family will be better served. But work is the last thing on the pecking order. The company should
Okay.
come last before, so I think for me, lots of companies are corporate profit, then the directors, and that
Yeah.
puts the clients at the very bottom. Whereas I'm like, if you think about the clients and then the admin and all the controlling, supporting functions that help us, if they're happy, your ship runs so much better. Then the advisors make sure they're listened to, they're supported, they can ask questions, that you're accountable. Because if you're accountable to them, then they become accountable to their clients. You treat people how you expect them to treat others and yourself. And then you and the company are the very last person,
Yeah,
but if you've poured enough in, there's enough left for you,
sure.
but you have
So
to
it's a
pour
true
in first.
it's a true nurture culture, which is I absolutely agree. You've so I was going to, say to you, ask you a question. When I was a guest actually on the priority lane myself, um, I made a comment and I quote, in business, it doesn't mean you're weak if you show empathy, uh, and you're nice and you listen. And of course, I was going to ask you whether you concur with that, and if so, how high do you hold those three things, in regard, empathy, listening, and actually just being nice? And you've just given me the
Yeah.
answer clearly.
I
So,
think it shows a strength. It's easy to lose your temper. It's easier to
uh,
be mean. It's a lot harder to think, where are they coming from right now? Like, y- you know, anyway, I really couldn't really be a shouting, screaming, because I'm like 5'0" and most of the people I work with have got a good foot on me. So I'd be like a tiny little child I'd be like that child having a wobbler in the middle of Tesco's.
on the floor.
Yeah. So
That's-
you have to choose another route.
no, fair enough. Okay. Well, listen, I just love that whole nurture engagement. And that's obviously something that you really put to the fore in your current role. So you're actually really looking after, the advisors that work under your umbrella, and I think that's um, certainly something to be lauded without a doubt. So I mean, amazing, amazing approach. Um, I mean, in across your career, what I'd like to, I mean, how have you ever approached navigating those power structure differences? How have they changed from your early career to now?
Oh, I used to want to fight it. I used to think it's so unfair, and
Right.
I want to change everything, and this isn't, and you'd shout, and the problem is, a lot of the time then, when you shout and scream as a man, you're powerful. And when you shout and scream as a woman, they're like, whoa, she must be hormonal. Give her a
Right.
bar of chocolate and tell her to be quiet. And so you have to learn that that doesn't work. Um, and a big lesson I had, my daughter's got a teacher, deputy head teacher, and she's absolutely wonderful. But when the children are shouting, she quiets, because you can't argue with someone if they're not arguing back. it's incredibly hard if you just
Sure.
sit there and go, okay, these
Yeah.
are the facts, but, I'm not going to scream and shout. We don't need to call each other names. And that's a lesson to learn that, not being aggressive is as powerful sometimes as having that aggressive personality. And those personalities are good in some ways because they are powerful and they're, addictive and you want to follow them. But
Sure.
you have to learn as well that you maybe don't have that, I'm not going to be banging on my chest and walking up and down. Like,
Yeah.
so, but you do try it first. You try and fight it and you try, and then you just get yourself in a tiz.
Yeah. It's true.
And
That's
you can't change some things. So you have to learn to adapt,
that's
you
fair.
know.
So how would you, in that adaptation, and obviously you've mentioned, what I mentioned about the human element, something that, I talk about a lot, but you've mentioned that where you're basically crossing over from, your home to your work life, and that balance, as we all know, has always been, tricky. Probably more so for women, as as you pointed out, that the men were generally seen as the breadwinner, that sort of thing. But for independent, entrepreneurial women in business like yourself, how how challenging is that balance being, mum to managing director? I mean, how difficult is that?
I mean, it's about building a village and working it and knowing what you can do and what you can't do. You've got to put your kids first because they only get one run at having parents. They only get one run. They're only this little for so long. You only get so much time when they're just little sponges. So they come
Yeah.
first. But I'm really lucky. Obviously, I've got good parents. I've got an amazing, like commercial director, Tom, who works with us, who keeps me very organized. He almost plans in advance. Like this week in May is normally sports days. So, we're not going to put in a track trip there, whereas I'd be thinking last minute. And then, over the years, I've made lots of good mum friends that are also juggling big careers. So we do a lot of like, it's school holidays. Like I'll take them one day, you take them all, and there'll be 12 kids running around on one day. But then you've got 4 days, which you can do. And also, most things can be fixed on a mobile phone. If you've got a good team that you trust, if your company can't survive you taking a bit of time to go and watch a school play and putting back in, then you're not doing something right. Because, I'm the same for everybody. I would tell everybody in my team, like, if your child needs you, that child comes first. You can cancel any meeting with me, you know, because if it's the most fundamental thing, we're here to build families
Sure.
and then I think people kick back. So, and I think COVID did a lot to teach people that there is a balance going on because it was all before everyone is in the office and then they're panicking
Yes.
and there's a lot of stress. Whereas now people are like, oh, I need to work from home today because Johnny's got a tooth appointment at 2 o'clock. And it's a lot more accepted for people to say, I do have these other things and they are important. But I think if you allow people to put their family life, you're not saying go off and play golf all day, but, if your child's poorly, be at home with them, do admin,
Sure.
and then 2 days later, they'll be better. They can do all their calls and meetings then. But they put more in, they feel like they're listened to. They're not stressed. They're not trying to hide things, because
Sure.
people go through things and you've got to remember your team are people. And like, if they remember that, they also remember that clients are people and clients have their own stresses and worries. And it's not about selling products or doing this, which comes organically with advice. If you give the right advice and you think about their family situation, you build that business underneath you as an advisor or, whatever. Um, but I do think, balancing is a trick. I think you have to be really organized. I've had to learn that. The diary is key, you know.
Yeah. But that's for me, it's just displays, an acute skill of communication, which you clearly have. Um,
Yeah,
and
don't shut up.
yeah, no, no, but communication is the key, I believe, and it's certainly in managing a business as you do, as you've just mentioned, you're communicating with your team all the time, and if it's awareness as well. I think is a key driver there. You're aware that other people have, they've got lives, they have different things that happen, and it isn't just your team in the company. it's your clients as well, because as you said, we're people, everyone's human, and we all have those pressures. So I think it's a real breath of fresh air that you are very strong on pushing that forward at Forest Wealth. I think it's a huge attribute, and no doubt you're enduring some significant success. I would hope.
Yeah, it's going
Um,
well.
that's good. In terms of the that communication, your team development. When we spoke the other week, you mentioned that you were kind of brought on to recruit and bring on new talent to make teams more productive. Effectively to be more successful. I mean, how did you go about that? What is it that you use to
Yeah.
identify?
No recruitment training whatsoever, but realizing pretty quickly that if you didn't tell the truth, it went horribly wrong. And if you put a bad apple or the wrong apple in the wrong team, it throws the whole team off. So even though they could be perfect somewhere else, I was quite open to going, right, you know what, you're not right for this firm. However, I know such and such at this firm. You don't earn anything for doing this. Go and give them a call, because that's better for that person. 5 years later, they might be in a different place. So might you. They'll come back to you because you've given them honest advice. But also knowing that when you put, and you've done it before, you put the wrong person in. So you put someone that's quiet and sensitive in with a really rowdy team, they become
Mhm.
more withdrawn. That team isn't fully gelled. It's always been, you've got to look at skills are quite simple. Yeah. Are you qualified? Have you got the degree? Have you got the qualifications? Can you do the job? Yes. So it all comes down to personality, really. And
Okay.
lots of people put it down to other things like performance figures, but you put the right personality in the right spot with the right team, you'll get the figures. And sometimes you won't. But
Yeah.
that's okay, because at least you've not disrupted the team. So the rest of the
No,
team
that's
will still float. But yeah, I think that's the biggest part about recruitment, is knowing that you could have somebody brilliant on paper that bills really well, but that one person can knock out 5 other people that are already performing.
yeah, understood. Okay. So that, I mean, that's a very I mean, that's such a skill to be able to identify, who's gonna work and who isn't. So, and to again, for you to have taken on roles like that without any proper, sort of training is a testament to what you do. So, I mean, yeah, I'm
Uh,
I'm sat here thinking, I'm such an underachiever.
no, no, I think I used to work for a guy called Tim, and he was a lovely, real nice guy to work for in this industry. Um, Very focused on his family and his kids. Very, didn't see women and men, just kind of saw people and their potential. And he pushed me out. And I think he saw that. He kept saying, when you're older,
Okay.
you will be brilliant. You just need to hone it. Don't go jumping first in. It's like dating. You just need to take your time, get to know them, you know.
That's interesting. So effectively, he is a mentor of some
Yeah, I
description
still
in
speak
certain
to
ways.
him.
That's great.
I value his opinion. He's always been very supportive, even when I've moved on and worked elsewhere. So, but yeah, I was very lucky, I think, in financial services, being young, to work for a company that was headed by someone that was not necessarily aggressive, like that was
Sure.
took the more gentle approach, that wanted to get to know people. Obviously, everyone's got their own opinion, but my opinion was that he was a really good learning curve for me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, that I think that's great. The fact that we have, that demonstrates that I know that we had a joke, about men and women in the workplace, but to have a male entity, shall I call it, that's, helping you or at least supporting you, and
yeah.
giving you the right direction rather than, shouting you down, I think is proves that the empathy side of things
What
is a
also
key thing.
shows you what you will tolerate and what you should tolerate. Because then
Interesting.
when you've worked for other people that don't do that, and it's like, from the be on the inside and piss out on people, that approach and the shouting and the toxicity, I'm like, no, you don't need to be like that. And I don't need to have that in my life, you know. there is plenty of good places you can work, good people. Forest Wealth is not the only great company. Like, I love what we're doing, but there is great companies out there. And I believe that, the industry as a whole needs to value each other, don't throw stones, all lift ourselves up together. So you can be a bit like car manufacturers where you'll have Audi, Mercedes, BMW, Range Rover all on a forecourt facing each other, because somebody's going to go and buy a luxury car that weekend.
Yeah.
And they might as well be all in together so that they've all got a chance of everybody walking around all of them. But you don't ever go into BMW and BMW go, "Psst, Mercedes, they're bloody," they don't. They're like, "Oh, that's a great car, but look at what we can do.
Of course.
Look at
Yeah.
this. Oh, have you seen the body on this?" They don't talk about the Mercedes body. They are like, they're quite comfortable in that their product is an equal, and it is about the consumer and the fit. So they put
Of
the
course.
consumer first. And that always, like in our industry, there's a lot of, "Oh, there are clients, there are clients, there are clients." The clients are people. They deserve, you can't have somebody that's worked for you for 8 years who decides to move on, who's self-generated, on commission, all of their own clients, looked after them, sat with them when they've had breakups, when mum's died, and done all that, and then say they're brilliant, they're brilliant, they're brilliant while they've got our badge. They move across the street and you're like, "They're awful, they stink." Well, if they were so awful, why did you have them under your badge? And what you're doing then is you are just putting the clients through turmoil.
Yeah.
The advisors, I believe, should just say, "I'm leaving. If you want to go, you're with me." And the company should send an email saying, "Your advisor's Matt. We've had a lovely 8-year tenure with him. I believe he's moving on. If you don't want to go with him, the door is always open here. But whatever, we wish you the best and thank you for using such and such a service."
Sure.
And leave the clients out of it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we go to work, this is our income, this is our day to day, but it's there forever. It's their
Sure.
families, it's their children's savings, it's their life insurance, it's their critical illness. And you go through stages. Like our advisor, has been through us through hard times, tough times. He knows us. He knows how myself and Ian work. He knows how many times he has to chase for paperwork. He knows he has to send it to us in paper form, because even though we've got a printer, we won't print it off.
Right.
He knows to send Ian's part of his to the office because Ian will sign it there. He knows us. So for us, if they just given somebody else, and it's all, it's not fair on the client. And that's from our perspective. And we know the industry. So I can't
Sure.
imagine clients that don't know it that then get pulled into these big fights. I'm like, stop it.
Yeah. It'd
Just
be
be enough
confusing.
on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in terms of that, generating that sort of business, you've obviously talked that, focusing on the client is a clearly key, but also your own team. Um, if I was to give you a scenario now, so if you were given, for example, or you had 90 days to, let's say, generate some new business from scratch, what are the first sort of steps you would take?
Oh gosh. Figure out
It's like an
firstly what
interview
kind of
question.
business. Yeah. Research. And then I do the old fashioned thing. I get on the phone. I,
Okay.
it, everything comes from hard work. You know, if you take shortcuts, if you cut corners, if you try and take other people's stuff, like, it's short lived. We've all seen so many people that come in, they do £500,000 for 2 years and then never heard of them again because they've sold loads of people a load of rubbish and they can't renew on them. The biggest thing is to get on the phone, build trust, build rapport. It might take longer than 90 days. It might take 180. It might take 3 years, but you'll do it properly and then it builds. You know, I went for lunch with an advisor yesterday because he's like a key member of our team. And he's got a brilliant client bank and he's going for dinner with them. And, he's just grown. And as they make money, he makes money. But, he's not trying to pull it out. He's not trying to put them in anything risky. He knows each one, and that's what advising should be. It shouldn't be "Oh, we need to make this much profit in 90 days. It should be, let's look at what we need to achieve for the client, how we best do that. Because if you serve, so for example, if I've got an advisor and he makes me 10% a year, every year, there's ups and downs, but 10% a year, takes fair charges. I can see it. I can call him when I need him. He's got all my policy documents if I ever need anything. I'm only going to feed into that, aren't I? I'm only going to refer people. You know, I'm only going to work with him more. You know,
Sure.
people aren't out there going, "Oh, I've got a great service, I'm gonna go and shop around." People shop around when they're not happy,
Correct. Yeah. Oh, I
so
see.
if you just focus on that and you get on the phone and you speak to people, you know, people are always have big schemes and get rich quick schemes and products, and I'm like, "Yeah, just do what you're meant to do."
No, that's sound advice. Something I wanted to ask, which I think I know the answer already, is um, imposter syndrome. Have you ever experienced that yourself?
Oh
I doubt.
god, everybody has that. Like, everybody, like, I was
That
like,
surprises
today
me from you, really,
no,
because
today I was like, "Oh
you're
my
so together.
god, podcast, oh, I don't like this." I've only just started posting on LinkedIn. I got 30 odd thousand followers, and I've only started posting recently. I'm like, I don't know what they've all been following, but, we'll get there. Um, it's hard to put yourself out there and go, "I'm great," like, because there's always things you can work on. There's always exams, like, I'm trying to, at the moment, register for September's ICA Level 8, like, so you can keep working on yourself, like, and you know, there's things you don't know, like, I've just started doing sign language, so I've done my British Sign Language Level 1, and now I'm doing Level 2, and I'm like, "Wow, these people are incredible. They can't hear to learn it, and yet they're fluent," and I'm like, "Wow." Like, and I go into those lessons, I'm like, "Wow, I'm not that smart." But, I think that's it. I think anybody that doesn't is lying to themselves, or they are overly confident and they
Yeah,
fall down then, and it's a bit
yeah.
too much ego. Like, everybody is flawed. I see all these posts like, "Oh, I'm up at the gym at 4 a.m. and I'm such a nice person and all." I'm deeply flawed. Like, ask my husband, I don't put my shoes away. I drink far too much red wine. I love cheese. The gym would probably have a heart attack if I walked through the door. Um, I'm not a perfect mum. You make mistakes, but you can only, if you don't know that you're these things, you can't make any changes.
Sure.
You've
But
got
it's
to have an alertness to yourself that you are, and everybody's playing imposter for a bit. You've got to learn things.
you have to have a confidence though there, Jen, to it isn't just about, for me, recognizing that, there is personal development that you could do. It's having the confidence to try or do
Yeah.
that something. I mean, to be fair, I've stolen a phrase from Return of the Jedi where Yoda says to Luke Skywalker, "Do or do not, there is no try." And I love that.
I like that. I've
I
never
actually
watched
have a
Star
dog.
Wars, but
I Okay, we need to talk. No, I've actually so I actually have a dog tag, which has that on it. Do or do not, there is no try, because effectively trying to do something, you are in effect doing. It is the act of doing.
yeah,
I think what people associate is success or not succeeding, and I think
yeah.
that's what
I think as long
creates
as you
this
can feed
stumbling block.
yourself, as long as you can
Right.
feed yourself and you're clothed and you're happy, you're richer than so many people in the world. So give it a go. But a lot of it is building really strong foundations. So, like, mine's some of my parents, but my husband is wonderful. Like, he's supportive, and we always just think, you know what? It would be rubbish to be living in a caravan together. But as long as the kids are healthy and you know, we'd make do, you know, and it's about having that people that believe in you behind you. Like, I eat off his belief in me, and I know, like, when he's gone for jobs, I'm like, "Come on, he's my little cheer." Like, oh, he's going to hate me for saying this, but cheerleader. Like, I've just put him in a dress on my first podcast. Um, but yeah, no,
And some
like,
pom poms.
that's important. Like, I've got friends that have got businesses as well. Like, one of my friends has just opened, like, beauty bar in Harrods, and like, champion her, like, share it, like, and I get that back, and I get it from my husband, and so you do have imposter syndrome, but then you've hopefully got people behind you going, go on,
Yeah, I
get out
understand it.
there."
Your support network. It comes back to that. So, I mean, talking about your friends, you got friends who are running other businesses and that sort of thing. How do you actively use your influence to help other women in an industry, not necessarily yours, but any that you know? How do you actively influence them?
I think, gosh, I honestly don't know. I just try and be supportive, you know,
Just try and be
share
there. Oh,
posts, just be there. Like, it's hard in our industry. We're so pit to go against each other. And I'm like, why? Like,
Yeah.
you can be great if you work at another firm. You can be great if you work at this firm, you know. And I think what we do need is to make it an environment where women are supported, like how those changes come. We're commission based and in the majority. What happens when women have children? Like, what are they going to do? Is there things in place? Have you got a service team that will look after their clients, still pay them their regular amount, and you swallow that cost as a business so they can stay in? But there isn't. Lots of businesses are like, off you go, try and juggle it, you know?
Mm.
And I think, again, for young people, we bring people in and their BDMs, they're on tiny salaries and 10, 20% survive. And if you make it, then you've got to do it all again and try and build your own client bank because we're not going to start you off with anything. And I'm like, the average age, I think we were discussing it, is late 50.
Yeah.
What happens when everybody wants to
Correct.
retire? I mean, somebody's going to
Right.
have a huge book of clients, but we do need to focus on bringing young men and young women in and nurturing them more and making it long term because we get a lot of people that come in, do a couple of years and then leave,
Sure.
you
Sure.
know. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
how do
that
you do that?
stat. Yeah, that stat we talked about the other week. That I think off the top of my head, there's approximately 35,500 IFAs in the UK. The average age is 58, and 18% are women, and 5.7% are below 30. Okay,
Yes.
so my question would be to you: what is it the industry, or what can we do to get more women into the financial services industry, and how are you gonna be able to attract that talent? What is it you need to do?
I think you've got to show them that people can do it. Like, there is great women out there. We've got great women advisors. I know there's great women advisors in other firms, and I think it's only by showing people, you know, it's only by showing people that you can lead a company or you can head on or you can go out and be an advisor. You can't make them, but you can show them and then you can try and ease the path, and keep saying, well, actually, this would be better. And, you know, if they're training, don't want them to go out and meet men in their homes on their own, put them with family
Uh,
visits,
yeah, yeah,
or bring the clients to the office, work with them. Because that was one thing when my first company overseas, and I'm like, I don't want to go and meet random men in their homes. Like, I don't know, I'm young. I'm like, not so comfortable with that. And
uh,
it's a consideration when you're a man that you probably don't think of. So having more women in, they were like that. And women that are probably braver than me that actually went out and did that, whereas I chose the recruitment thing. But lead and then go, actually, you know what? We'll have this rule set. Or, for the first 10 meetings or so, they'll go out with another advisor and we'll do it like this. We'll have a check-in system so we know where they are and, different things, that other women will have thought of over the years.
So effectively, so that sounds like to me, there's a lack of, I suppose, public knowledge about perhaps the industry and what it potentially could offer. Um,
Yeah.
my question would be to you: have you, either now in your current position or with any other firm that you've looked after, have you ever done, or do you do, like discovery days where you give up your time to, and you effectively use the company's resources to do a talk or promote something and try to attract? Have you ever done anything like that?
Um, no, I don't. I've not really seen a lot of that focused at young people and women. There's a lot of let's bring in BDMs because they'll generate leads,
Hmm.
and not a lot of let's talk about it. I mean, like SJP have got the academy, which I think is
Academy, is there?
great,
Yep.
and I think that more people need to discover that. Um, but I think they need to come out with a structured learning plan. They need to know where they're going, and you know, it is hard at the beginning. They're young and, as a young person, you're going in, but that comes with education. If you educate them, you can go and see a lawyer at a big firm and they might be 27. I'll still listen to them because they know more than me,
Yeah.
but we need to make sure we're educating them and that they're getting the qualifications and that they are sitting with advisors all the way through that. So they learn it so that when they do go out, they're not just young and inexperienced. They're just younger.
That's a good point. So I suppose that leads me to a couple of closing questions because I'm just intrigued to hear from you. What piece of advice would you give? You know, not let's say your younger self, but what piece of advice would you give to any young women thinking about or not knowing about coming into the financial services industry?
Give it a go. Don't change who you are. You've got different strengths. Just find them and it'll be great because it's a great career to have when you do have children when they're older because it's more flexible. You know, you can do it. You just have to do it a different way, you know.
Okay,
Believe in themselves
that's a good one. Belief, surely. I understand. To
and
I imagine.
tally up with other women. Yeah, women champion women, you know, like me and Sarah work together so closely. Like, you've got to build each other up. You are in a man's world, but that's changing. Like, my children are now coming into my life. They're three girls. They need to see women working because financially the world's a different place. You need two incomes, or most families need two incomes. You
Agreed.
know, they need to learn to work. And I also think, the dynamic of life is changing. And if they've got their own money and they've got their own career and they've got a husband, they can make a real partnership, a team, rather than reliance. And, then it's like, oh, we're having a baby, but I'll take this part of this slack and we'll build it up because we're building something together because they feel like an equal. None of my children will sit down and listen. That's why I want them to learn. If something's wrong, they've got to say it. They've got to act
I
on it.
don't. You're not alone with that. I'm pretty sure. That's for sure. I'm sure. Well,
But
listen, Jen, thank you so much for your time. Um, just as I said, breath of fresh air, enlightening, and some very strong advice, which I really appreciate. So, thank you for joining me. Um, this is a Priority Lane. I'm Lawrence Dauncey with Jen Toon-Davenport, and we're going to sign out now. But thank you very much, Jen. See you next time.
thank you. Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by My Brokers app, a white label app built specifically for financial advisors and wealth management professionals. If you want to know how you can have your own app exclusively for your business and your clients up and running by this time next week, visit mybrokers.app or download the free My Brokers demo app from your favorite app store.